Hello and welcome back to the Lee's Summit Town Hall Podcast. I am your host, Nick Parker. This is a good time to remind everybody that this podcast is brought to you, the good people of Lee's Summit, by Budget Blinds of Lee's Summit and Overland Park. They are a great local company running a great local business. I just said company and business twice. My line is usually that it's a great local family running a great local business. I took a little hiatus. I'm a little off my game here. Budget Blinds, they are your home for, as we like to say, a smart home, your robot shade overlords. They do all the things for the inside of your home, not just the shades. But we really like to focus on here. We focus on those smart shades. You want to control your blinds with your phone, your smart speaker, whatever. This is the place to go. Go see him right in the heart of downtown. Tell him Nick sent you. My guest, he's back. My guest this week, I haven't had him on in a long time. He's a regular columnist, a long-time face and voice in the community. John Beaudoin, welcome back.
Hey, thanks. You really sold me on Budget Blinds. I'm going to have to give them a call.
I should.
Yeah, I'd like to meet them.
That was.
I'd like to get to know that family.
If you've lived here for long and been, in any way hanging out near downtown and don't know the Stoddard family behind Budget Blinds, then you haven't been paying attention.
I have a hashtag, love the Stoddards. So
yeah. Well, listen, the patriarch of that family might be one of the few people that could be called louder than you and I.
He would argue with that, I think.
I'm sure he would.
Yes.
Loudly. John, you're a regular columnist. You're I like to say you're a little bit of a rabble rouser sometimes, which is fine, and it's fun.
Well,
fun for me to
that's
watch,
fair.
To watch the clicks.
Yeah.
Look, you've been doing this a long time. You and I have been in the newspaper, community journalism world for 30 years.
Yeah, decades. Yes.
We both worked at the Journal at separate times, not together.
Yep.
Here before that disappeared from existence.
Pour one out for the Journal.
Right. So you know the town,
right? And
you've been writing about the town and covering it. You had a column this week. It was a Q&A with Councilmember Donnie Funk,
right,
of the 4th District. That's the east side,
the
far east side of Lee's Summit.
That's right.
This is the second Q&A type column that you've done. Usually, people usually say columns. They think opinion. They think commentary. This one wasn't really. This was just a pretty straight Q&A. But what I wanted to do was bring you in because I want to have a little bit of that commentary, a little bit of that analysis based on your conversation with Councilmember Funk. And I think I want to talk to, I think there's still some questions. You asked a lot of questions.
Absolutely.
But, my brain at the end of it was sir, I have a few more. I have some follow-ups.
Right.
And so I thought it would be good to talk a little bit about that conversation, maybe what you think we learned, and where we think, we ought to ask a few more questions, and maybe it's where some people and others in the community should be asking a few more questions. Let's just start.
Absolutely.
Let's just start easy. Why'd you choose Councilmember Funk right after? This is 2 months after the election.
Right.
What led you to this conversation with this particular councilmember?
And like you said, I've done some Q&As before. I think it was last year I did a Q&A with Mia Pryor, who's in is in District 1. Chose Councilman Pryor back then because District 1 is my district, so a little selfishly about what was going on. And of course, Green Street was the big topic at the time and what was happening in District 1. District 1 is an interesting district that includes downtown but rides this swath all the way down to Raintree.
This weird dogleg down south.
So, and to keep the 4 districts population centered, sometimes you have to do weird things. District 3 kind of edges almost to downtown itself all the way from Lakewood. And then District 4 is interesting too because, one of the takeaways, why I picked Donnie, Donnie had been on Planning Commission for a decade or more and then had filled out a term on council and was ready to take that 4-year spot. And this was an interesting election, I think, because we had the 2-year spot and the 4-year spot, and that rarely happens.
Councilmember Funk was just a little bit of background. He was appointed by the council to fill out the remainder of the year after Councilmember DeMauro stepped down and resigned from the council, and then the opportunity to run for the final 2 years of that term.
Right. Yes.
And instead, he opted to go for the open
Right.
4-year term, which was open as Councilmember Faith decided not to run for re-election.
Right. Yeah, and of course, one of the questions I didn't put to Councilman Funk was, what do you really think happened with Councilman tomorrow? But some of that was tackled before the election. But no, I wanted to talk to Councilman Funk because I think four is interesting, and four has had a colorful past. Checkered in some ways, but also an interesting run over the last 10, 15 years about who has represented that. Bob Johnson was such a familiar face in that district for years. And one of the things Councilman Funk brought up that I thought was interesting was, I wanted to talk about Green Street, the things that don't necessarily hit his district, but downtown days, the city budget, things like that. But one of the things that he said that was interesting that I'm glad he did was, I always forget how many rooftops are in four. Four is not a business centric.
No, that's actually what makes it stand out. Is it's almost all rooftops.
It's almost all rooftops, and you've got the former Big Lots over there, which is now Savers, and a grocery store and a few other things. But until they built up Johnny's and Price Chopper and that over there, I mean that the area still though is mainly rooftops, and that is kind of the underlying challenge, if you will, and also opportunity of that district. But there's constant public works and other issues that you have to tackle, infrastructure and things like that, that you have to tackle in District 4. And so I'm really glad we got into a lot of topics that we'll get into today, but I'm glad that Councilman Funk at least acknowledged that and acknowledged that's a much different district to represent than, say, the downtown core or a District 2 that includes Longview and a lot of other commercial things like that. So I'm glad that we started a conversation about each district has its own, again, challenges and opportunities, and that's certainly one for four.
Well, and I think every election, the last several series of elections, we've talked about development. We've talked about housing, multifamily versus single family.
Right. Yes.
I feel like that conversation is
apartments.
Right. Yeah. That conversation is different in District 4.
Right.
Maybe a little more boisterous.
Yes.
Because that's 80% of the development out there, if not more. I mean, I'm
absolutely
going off the cuff here, without looking at the data, but that's the majority by far of development out there.
Right.
Is housing. You hit that a little bit. Did you? I know you wanted a lot of topics with him, so you didn't dig in. But do you? Yeah. Is that a place where you wanted to dig deeper?
Oh, I mean, Donnie and I could have. I'm sorry, Councilman Funk and I could have gone 3 hours. But I didn't want to. I didn't want to take up time drilling down to every single question and having 8 follow-ups because sometimes you want to go with quality over quantity. There's a lot of questions that come up. There's a lot of topics that come up. But no, I wanted to drill down a little on housing only because there has been so much brought up about apartments, about multifamily, what we're gonna do when this apartment complex opens, when this development opens, how many multifamily, how many single family are going to be a part of that. And we know from looking at the stats at City Hall, there are single family permits going in every single month. The notion that we're being overrun, and Councilman Funk acknowledged it in the Q&A that we got a little, the percentage got a little high.
Right.
On multifamily. He said that. He didn't say how much, and I'm not sure I followed up with that because I don't think he came with a notebook of numbers that would tell me that. I don't think that'd be a fair question to say, well, tell me exactly where we are. But I know that we're not in double digits over.
Right.
We may be a little over, but again.
And what you're talking about there is what the strategic plan called for.
What the plan calls for,
which is an X percentage of development is single family, X percentage is multifamily, X percentage is commercial. And there's a plan.
And these housing studies 20 years ago told us these apartments were coming. The apartments that are built in downtown, the apartments that are built over by on Shipman over by Aldi. It's a lot of District 3 apartments going up over in that development, Steve Rich's development. We all knew that was going to happen. That was all. That land was sitting there ready for development, and it's been ready for development for a long time. None of this should be a surprise.
Right. Well, let's kind of. I'm going to do like you did with him. We're going to jump around.
Right.
Jump to the next thing.
Yes.
Let's sticking with development though. One of the questions I liked is because he brought up what's happening over on the southern side where there's a new Costco coming, and you did ask him like, okay, what can we expect? What do we need more of?
Right.
Beyond some more restaurants over there at the Costco,
Right.
which by the way, I'm a Costco guy, so I'm a little bit excited.
You're ready for Costco.
And you know how I dislike driving, so
Yeah.
not having to go to Independence,
Right.
really.
Yeah, the only downfall is that it didn't build Costco downtown, right?
Right. I'm sure that fits in with the design standards for downtown.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
I might have been the only one,
Right.
and that's just because of my laziness and disdain for driving.
Oh, we have the old farmer's market lot. They could put it there.
Yeah, Costco Mini.
Mini Costco, yes. Like a Walmart market.
I did like that you asked him, what do we need?
What else do we need?
What do you want to see added
Right.
beyond that? I'm not sure that he really answered it.
He went to Class A, which, I've heard Class A for 20 years.
Class A office.
Class A office. And Class A office was going to, come in some form somewhere in Lee Summit, all the way back to the EDC days of Jim Devine back in the late 2000s and early 2010s. And I only bring Jim Devine's name up because, Jim Devine oversaw a lot of development.
Former LSEDC director.
LSEDC director oversaw a lot of development in this town over that time. But the magic key of that massive Class A office space that so many other cities around our size, I'd say sometimes cities maybe a little bigger than us, but cities around our size have the benefit of, it's that thing, office space, Class A office, and manufacturing. That's every town makes a wish list. That's on it. It's always on it, and getting it is exponentially more difficult than putting it on a wish list. So
and it changes. I mean, you mentioned earlier that housing studies 20 years ago told us that multifamily was probably coming.
Right.
When I first came back and I spent my 30 seconds in commercial real estate, they were talking there about then a need for industrial in Lee Summit.
Industrial, right.
That's not the conversation now.
Yeah.
So the markets, like everything else do change. I want to ask this. I don't know if this is fair or not. The council does make the decisions. They approve plans. They do. Yeah. But do we expect them really to always be on top of those things to know what the market is and what is needed and what will work?
Well, you have individual council members, just like in every city. You have individual council members that are advocating for certain things. Excuse me. And not just advocating. Actually, you have council members here in Lee Summit that are calling Trader Joe's corporate and saying, why aren't you in Lee Summit? And it's good to have that on your side. It's good to have an EDC. We have an EDC director that has the experience, I think, in Joe Perry now, some experience that probably his predecessor didn't have as a site selector, but Joe Perry has the experience, I think, in the Kansas City area to continue conversations that we need to have. When you couple that experience that he has with council members who are advocates, you can move that needle a little. Now, I always say in economic development that my standard line is if Trader Joe's wanted to be here, they'd be here. If there was land that was available, if there's parking that's available, if they do it, Trader Joe's and Costco and all these people, they do studies all the time. Quick Trip is the best at figuring out where to be and where not to be. That's all part of economic development.
And sometimes it's just move the land and rotate the store. Absolutely.
And we have all this land opening up in Lee Summit, so there are new opportunities, East Village and West Pryor and all these things. All these things are gonna go ground up, and we're gonna see more hotels here and possibly Class A office space. I don't necessarily fault Councilmember Funk for keeping that answer simple, but yes, I always would like a deeper drill down Not necessarily I want a Trader Joe's, but I'd like a deeper drill down sometimes, and maybe I need to make these Q&As more of a 90-minute affair. And not that I'm saying that everyone gets an hour.
Well, I think that's my question is it really fair to expect a council member to be able to really drill down?
No.
Is that a fair question for them?
No.
And they have access to more information than we do.
Yes.
And they have the ability to ask more people than the common resident, right?
And some of
but they're not all experts.
No.
They're not real estate people for the most part.
No. And
some of them are.
And some of them are. And my Q&As, I like to have a balance of macro and micro. I will ask you some micro questions. What do you want to see here? And then I'm going to ask you some macro questions about what's the best practice on talking about the budget to the community. That's a very macro question. What should we be doing to inform the community during the budget process for the city? So I like to have that balance. And yes, if they're not gotcha questions, I really would like to know, what do you want to see here? Councilman Funk said, I'd like to see some Class A office space. So I'd like to know now, what's the plan on that? What areas have we located or designated or looked at and said, this is a good spot for that? And what opportunities are we going to give those Class A office spaces to move here to Lee Summit?
Yeah, I think that's what conversations are happening now in City Hall around that, or at the EDC meetings. Right.
It's a constant. I'm sure that's again, industrial manufacturing, Class A office. Those are all. I mean, we have. I'm not saying we've hit the. We could always use more retail, always use more restaurants, always use more. All those things. Service, things like that. But everyone has a thing that they want to see in this community, and it really does take a mixture of investment, of skin in the game, of a robust EDC that actually is a player in the Kansas City area, which I think we finally have again, and a little bit of council push.
What's on your top of your wish list? Mine, I want a downtown butcher shop.
Well, you wanted Costco, well, so you got your Costco.
Well, not the mini Costco that I can walk to, but it's fine, whatever. I've always dreamed of a downtown butcher shop.
Yeah, what's interesting is what's on I wish I had a specific thing. I've been to Trader Joe's. I've never left a Trader Joe's and thought, oh my God, I've got to have this right next door to me in Lee Summit. I just haven't.
Yeah.
And I understand it's a cool thing. I do like Costco. I've been to Sam's Club. I've gone to both. I don't really have a preference one way or another. I can get 8 pounds of peanut butter at either one. So it doesn't really matter to me. But the smaller things like you've brought up, butcher shop, a thing like a record store / cocktail bar, something. But I think more in terms of what I can do downtown. I'm extremely fortunate, and I'm an example of somebody that when people move to Lee Summit, they very deliberately kind of find where they want to be. Sometimes that's a neighborhood off 3rd and Pryor. Sometimes that's District 4 where there's a lot of rooftops and a lot of community, a lot of neighborhoods. And sometimes it's downtown where I can get my haircut and my taxes done and eat and drink and take Addie shopping at some of her favorite spots and do 70% of my commerce walking distance from my house. That's the fortunate part of where we live here.
Yeah, no, I agree. I throw that in. Fun wish list.
Yeah, I'll have an answer by the end of this program. Yeah, what do I really want in Lee Summit?
Really want it in Lee Summit.
Yeah, another brewery. How about that?
Well, let's talk. I mean, because you brought up communication during budget process.
Yeah,
it was a little interesting this time. Budget cycles are always weird and they're constantly in flux. One of the things Lee Summit does that a little differently than other communities I've covered over my career is the constant review of their budget, where they're at in the budget. So it seems to be in flux, and that's probably not the right phrase, but in flux more than others I've covered, where they make adjustments based on things that have real time that have happened.
Yeah.
Whether it's a sign of our times or that it fell right after what was a contentious election cycle.
That's it.
this got a little weird, and I think as a whole, the communication wasn't great.
Yeah, no, it wasn't, and it really is these opposing forces of a very small amount of very loud voices saying there's something definitely wrong here, something is amiss, and oh my God, we're going broke, and the council being behind on that messaging. Now, the council can't get ahead of that messaging if they don't know it's coming. The biggest, worst flub, and Mark Dunning has owned it, is Mark Dunning saying he's losing sleep about the budget process, about the budget. That's all he had to say for people to just run with this thing. Now, when you know better, you do better. I can guarantee you, for the rest of his career, Mark Dunning will never.
That's City Manager Mark Dunning.
City Manager Mark Dunning. I'm sorry. I need to. I'm glad you're here to put the titles and other. I'm talking as if everyone knows the names I'm talking about. But City Manager Mark Dunning, who has been our city manager for a couple of years, he took over, was assistant city manager.
Has it been almost 5 years?
5
now?
years maybe since Steve Arbo left, and Mark is that story in Lee Summit that we like, which is local boy makes good. He grew up here. He started in codes, I think, and
worked his way up.
Building inspector maybe, and worked his way up, and now he's running the 6th largest city in the state of Missouri, and he's still learning. Communications is communications has been a challenge for that building for as long as I have been in Lee Summit, and that is 17 and a half years.
To be fair, it's always a challenge, especially as a city grows to the size this is, at the pace that it has.
Absolutely. So he says this thing, which, I don't know, pre-social media or the council being on camera would have just been a blip in the night, but he says this thing now that makes the news and everyone uses it as a headline. Excuse me. And then it becomes, the budget's keeping you up at night. There must be something amiss. There must be something, something strange is afoot at the Circle K. There's got to be something going on that we don't know about. And so then we say that there's a $13 or $14 million shortfall. That is a discussion that happens naturally with every budget. And sometimes that number isn't a shortfall. Sometimes that number is $1 million. Sometimes it's more. It just is. This is how the budget works. They weren't presenting a budget for approval that was $14 million in the hole. Not after they just built Green Street and spent all this other money. They're presenting a budget they're discussing a budget that is in the very beginning form. This thing starts in January. It rolls out. It goes to budget or finance and budget. It goes through all these iterations, but this product wasn't finished yet. That's like they weren't pulling the pottery out of the kiln halfway through. It wasn't ready yet.
That was an interesting cliche you pulled there.
The pottery in the kiln.
Yeah.
The pizza out of the oven. It wasn't. It wasn't done yet. And I just and so I call that feigned outrage because that's what it is. Everyone knows what this budget process. If you've paid any amount of attention to how our budget works in any city budget, knowing that July 1st is or June 30th is the drop dead deadline, the new budget takes effect July 5th. Look, we years and years and years ago, they were holding emergency meetings near the end of June to finally get this through committee and to a council vote. And this is before we had the thing where you could only do one reading. We used to be able to do 2 readings on the same night.
Right.
We don't do that anymore. We have 1 reading, and then we go to another week for another reading to give more space for people to digest this information. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it adds some time to the process. But we've been down this road before. It's one of those things you go, just like your own home financials, you can say, this is how our year's going to go, family of 4, we're going to spend on this, and things come up. Lee Summit has to deal with Jackson County tax nonsense, has to deal with ebbs and tides of sales tax, has to deal with
which are, by the way, always behind.
Always behind. Always behind. So you have a million things. The city doesn't have any good reason to present an unbalanced budget. The city doesn't have a good reason, and there's nothing nefarious going on with a budget that comes out that's a little off. That's when you start to tinker with things, just like your own house. If I knew I was going to have a shortfall in my house next week, guess what I would do?
What would you?
I'd start cutting Hulu and all these other things in my life, and I'd fix it. You know, and that's just what you do. Not Hulu. I like Hulu.
Yeah,
I gotta watch The Bear.
Well, it's the last season.
Yeah.
What would you say to people? Because people should be involved.
Yes.
People should pay attention.
Yeah.
And they should ask questions.
They should.
So how should residents approach this, I guess, without leaping to conclusion? And look, social media, while we need it, and it's your business.
It is my business.
Your business is built around effective social media.
That's right.
But we also all know that by its nature and really by human nature and the way we use it, no matter how hard we try not to,
Fallible.
Yeah. But it's driven by outrage.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you suggest people approach and try to dig in on these without getting into good or bad, getting into shouting matches and hyperbole?
So Councilman Funk brought up an interesting point too, that if I knew, I had forgotten that they get quarterly reports on the budget, and those are discussed in council. Those aren't just backroom discussions. Those are actually discussed in finance and budget and at council. No one knows discussions are coming, but committee work is the heartbeat of what our council does. I know it eats up so much of their time. God bless anyone that wants to be in public office.
That's why I always like to watch newly elected, because no one has any idea the amount of time they just volunteer.
No. Public Works Committee, Rules Committee, Government Relations, Finance and Budget, all of the committees. Watch those committees. If you really want to know what's going on, watch those committees. Because, again, I can sit here and say till I'm blue in the face that the city has no real motivation to lie to you about what the budget is and bring forth a budget that is so out of whack that the town. This is a town that has the highest credit rating you can have, that has for years had finance directors going back to Conrad Lamb and before him that are really, really good at their job, and a city staff that trusts the finance department to do its job. There's all these layers. There's all these checks and balances that happen here. And as we talk about checks and balances on a greater scale in this country, you see this happening. And sometimes it doesn't happen at our county level even. But here I think these things still happen. And I'm not an apologist for the city. There's a lot of things we need to fix over there. But I believe that process works. But people have to pay attention to the committees. All the committees are televised. You know when they're happening. They're posted at City Hall. They're online. If people really are that invested in the budget, start watching finance and budget like in January. Start watching it 6 months before they vote on it.
Right. And that's when all the departments are starting to do their process.
Absolutely.
As well.
And
I would
is
also
a process.
say, look, it takes a nerd's brain and a lot of patience.
Right.
But I would say also, if you are worried about the development progress of the city, where what numbers are higher than others, what sections are getting more, watch Planning Commission.
Right.
Go to Planning Commission.
Right.
You can speak at Planning Commission. There are public hearings all the time.
I think we're somewhat a little trapped in the conspiratorial world right now, where there's a very small group of people that think that there's something completely nefarious going on with the budget right now. They still haven't found it. If they did, we haven't heard about it. But I think until we bridge that gap, there's always going to be people that say, "Oh my gosh, well, there's a shortfall. What's going on with the budget? Where who's getting paid out of where?" It shows a patent lack of understanding how that building works. Everything in that building does not go smoothly all the time. I'll tell you that.
And you can pretty much track every dollar.
And you can track
that's the nice thing about the way our governments work.
City is compelled to bring a budget forward, and if they cannot, they're going to tinker with it, and they're going to work nights and weekends. We've seen them do it. We've seen them go into June with the budget to try to bring this thing forward.
Well, you kind of brought up the we got into there are groups of people, and there is a lot of hyperbole.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the council has spent a lot of time, several months, talking about how they handle public comments and how they handle decorum and rules of a meeting. You broached it a little bit with Councilmember Funk. Do you like his answer into what the Rules Committee is talking about?
Right now, I think the Rules Committee. I want to be careful.
I know I kind of took a hard right turn on you there. I didn't really use the clutch for that shift, but
I want to be careful to say whether I liked an answer or not, because a Q&A is.
Do you feel as a columnist covering the town?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that answer was enough?
Councilman Funk's answer on public comments?
Yeah.
No, I always like them to go harder on an answer. No, I always would.
Well, I mean, as a writer, you always want more.
Right. I always want them to come straight out and say, but I believe he did say that Rules Committee is going to look at it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Rules Committee right now apparently is tackling the camera angle, which I just think is a huge red herring. I don't think anyone should care where the camera is. You're not stomping on anyone's First Amendment rights. I've gone to public comments before. I could care less if the camera is on my feet. I don't care. What I'm saying is infinitely more important than where the camera is now.
And the group that you're speaking to.
And the group that you're speaking to, and the fact that you have the council's attention for 3 minutes. Now, if I went every week and berated them and showed the same video every week and went down all these conspiratorial tunnels and quasi-threaten them and compliment them 1 second and then turn on them the next, then they're going to start taking me less and less seriously. You pick and choose your battles, just like with a school board or anyone else, then I think they're going to take you seriously. But we can tackle decorum and expectations without stomping on people's First Amendment rights. I don't understand why we can't have that discussion without a few people saying, "Well, that's it. That's the end of our First Amendment." The City of Independence tackled this years ago when I was at the Examiner. The City of Blue Springs tackled this under Carson Ross and still holds true to this day. It is okay to talk about what the expectation is at public comments without telling people. You're not killing public comments. You're putting expectations on public comments for decorum and for what you expect to happen which would be at any public forum. And it's okay to do that. The fact that we're stuck in this where
How do you feel about time limits?
3 minutes is
because I feel like that's a point of contention.
It is, but here's the deal. I don't care if it's 1 or 3 or whatever. You have to stick to it. And this is another place that we failed, is that we let people, and this happens at school board sometimes, we let people constantly go over their time. And if the time limit doesn't mean anything, then it doesn't mean anything. Then just say up to 5 or say up to 4. Although if you say up to 4, people are going to push it to 5. You say up to 5, people are going to go to 5.5. I mean, we have to have.
You need the light system.
Well, hey, listen,
yellow light, red light.
I'd like someone up there with the play 'em off music like at the Oscars. When you've hit your 3, I've heard people. It's a little extreme. Well, you turn the microphone off at 3. I think some cities actually do that. I don't know that I like that, but.
Managing a meeting is a skill.
Managing a meeting is a skill. I think it takes a stronger mayor than we had in the past, and I'm hoping that Mayor Lopez can get this done, and that Trish Carlisle, the chair of the Rules Committee, can get this done to make these expectations known at the beginning of every meeting. Don't just read the thing that says, this is a public comment, this has to be something about the agenda or a city-related thing. Put your expectations in. You have 3 minutes. We want, and listen, you can do the compliment sandwich if you want. We're really appreciative that you're here. These are our expectations, and we're going to follow them. Thank you. Let's hear your comments. There's a way to put that out and be nice about it, but also be firm about it. We're not doing well at any of that, and now we're stuck on where the camera is. Who cares? That thing drives me batty because it's such a red herring.
What do you mean by that? I think why? What is it distracting from?
It's because we're going to sit at Rules Committee and talk about where the camera is and whether or not that infringes on someone's First Amendment rights, instead of talking about the public comments themselves. We're eating up airspace and time and bandwidth on where the camera is. Why aren't we having the real discussion? Is what do we do about public comments? How do we keep ourselves safe? How do we make sure that they are respectful and respecting of people's First Amendment rights, while also setting an expectation about Can someone come up and run the same gag every single week? Can someone come up and make comments that we deem threatening? Can someone come up and berate us for 3 minutes about things that have nothing to do with city matters or anything on the agenda, even though we just said what you're talking about has to be a city-related matter or something on the agenda? Let's hold that to account instead of where the camera is. I mean, where the camera is where the camera is. That they moved it, I understand, upsets a few people, but really it is such a distraction.
How do you have that conversation and make those rules, whatever they are, right? While also still trying to be inviting and encouraging of people to be a part of the process? Because I think that's something every local government, state government, whatever, every government has this issue.
Right.
I like to stay at the local level because I feel like you can actually get involved and do things locally.
Yeah.
How do you keep encouraging people and welcoming people to be involved when you're also saying, hey, look, there's rules?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a tough line to walk.
Well, and again, I'd also like to get back to the expectations of public comments. You get up, you introduce yourself, you'd say your address, and you get right to your point. And if there isn't a timer right there watching your 3 minutes, and someone needs to make sure there's one there. But the idea I had years and years ago, so I spent a little bit of time at City Hall doing economic development communication on a contract. I wasn't technically a city employee. I just did contract work for them for a while. And one of the ideas we had that never went anywhere was, why don't we do a public comment of the week? And that public comment of the week is pulling out, whether it's good or bad, and we have to be fair about that. If someone comes up and says, hey, Public Works killed it for me this week, they filled this pothole, thank you. Or they come up and say, I have been calling the water department for a year and no one has ever called me back. Whatever the public comment is. But we post that up and we tell people that they are welcome to come and speak. They have this much time to speak. But we highlight that because there's implied consent. When you go up and you say your name and you're going to public comments, we should use that. Not negatively, but we could take that and run the whole thing. You don't take a clip because then you'd be accused of just cutting out a piece of it. But let's have a public comment of the week or a public comment of the month or whatever. Thank you for coming. We're going to run this little thing and we're going to say thank you. And then we're going to remind people consistently that this is the expectation while you're here. That idea never went anywhere, but I am pitching it again. I think it's a good idea, and I guarantee you probably some other city out there already does it.
Well, let's kind of wrap this up a little bit because you and I can talk about this forever. We talk a lot. But let's go back to kind of the original thing. What do you want more of yourself as someone who covers, and what do you think readers, listeners of this podcast of Link to Lee Summit, people in the community, what should they be asking?
Yeah. Well, I think this in this day and age of outrage, whether it's real or imagined, sometimes comes from, I just heard this thing is happening. And we have seen that so many times over the years. I have, at least in this town. I've seen it in Blue Springs and Independence and Iowa and other towns I've covered. Oh my gosh, I just found out this thing is happening. Now, no one's going to accuse that of, we got so much publicity on canceling downtown days. That's not news to anyone. We got so much publicity on the budget. That really isn't news to anyone. But sometimes there are things that happen at the hall where somebody say, oh, I had no idea this was happening. The city puts out, enough information, but I'd say they can always put out more. I mean, we could definitely communicate better. There's a new communication or creative services communication director, Megan Dillard, who comes from TV. She's put out a strategic communication plan that's supposed to tackle some of these shortfalls. I'll put some of it on communications because I tend to do that because I think we're terrible at controlling our narrative. We're not great at getting ahead of the message, and that goes to a lot of entities in Lee Summit. But I think there is also something to be said for, if you're coming to us and you've just heard about this thing, sure, we'll take a little responsibility for that. But there's so much televised. There's so many committee meetings. I've heard recently that somebody was upset last week about council committee assignments. And it's like, well, that happened a month ago. Now, it's okay to be upset about it now, but that thing happened a month ago, and And it was very public when it happened, and it created all sorts of discussions about, do elections have consequences, and the mayor pro tem and all these things. But there's got to be a balance between how much the city communicates and more importantly, how much they invest in communications. I think that department should be twice the size that it is, or 3 times. How much they're doing versus how much the citizenry is paying attention. Now, sometimes we can't blame people if there's less media than there used to be, if it's more social media driven or whatever it is. If they pay attention to Link to Lease Summit, they'd know a lot of this stuff. But just a plug there. But there's a balance between what the city does and how well they do it, and am I paying attention, or did I just hear about this thing that now I'm upset about?
I want to kind of go backward a little bit. I know I said we are going to wrap up,
yeah.
but you brought it up. Do you feel like the committee assignment kerfluffle has been resolved?
No, it hasn't, because Cynda is still. I'm sorry, Councilmember Rader. I'm sorry. There's some of these people I know on a first name basis, so I'm going to apologize again. I have to remember, and it's not a disrespect thing at all. But Councilman Rader. In fact, I have committee assignments here on my phone. Again, some of this falls under elections have consequences. And, we somehow survived 8 years of Mayor Baird making Beto Lopez, who is now our mayor, the mayor pro tem every single time. We used to have council vote on mayor pro tem. That changed to the mayor appointing mayor pro tem.
That was part of the charter changes in 2016,
part of the charter changes. I was on that charter commission. I'd have to go back and see how I voted on that. I don't remember how I voted on that particular, but that was quite a discussion in 2016 about because the council voting on mayor pro tem got so contentious and out of whack that I think that it was decided maybe the mayor gets to do that. Little did we know the mayor would pick the same person for 8 straight years, which does not help build leaders up in this city. It does not help this isn't a little league softball game where everyone gets to play first. So I'm not suggesting that everyone gets to rotate around, and if it's your turn to be mayor pro tem, even if you've done nothing to earn that, you get to be. At the same time, much like committee assignments and committee chairs, if we're not raising the next generation of leaders who are already on council, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. But as you know, Councilman Rader declined her appointments. And in fact, I think the only thing I see her on is the Board of Aeronautic Commissioners as a liaison. She did not get a single other liaison assignment. I would have liked to see her on something. But, I'm going to read some names off, and it's in community and economic development. Councilman Shields is the chair. Councilman Pryor is the co-chair. Rules Committee, Councilman Carlisle, Councilman Pryor. Governmental Relations, Councilman Funk, Councilman Frazier. Public Works, Councilman Pryor, Councilman Funk. Finance and Budget, Councilman Carlisle, Councilman Shields. If you see a familiar theme there, you're not alone. There's a couple of council members who are brand new. Councilmember Cravens, Councilmember Atkins, and Councilmember Rader that are not included anywhere in the chair and co-chairs. Again, not saying you have to. Councilman Rader is not new. The other two are new. Councilman Frazier did get a co-chair.
We have Craven, Atkins,
and Councilman Rader.
Well, no, but our new ones, Frazier, Craven, and Atkins are our new ones.
Yeah, are new, right. And Councilman Frazier did get a co-chair for government relations. But it's a rough start. It's a rough start to a council term that this wasn't decided. This is my consternation, if you will. This is what grinds my gears. This should have been done in the back room. We used to do some of our best council work, and I'm not suggesting that we're not transparent or anything else, but we used to do some of our best council work back in that room when they're all having dinner and they're fighting over stuff. And then they'd come out and they'd have that figured out. Doesn't mean you can't battle it out in front of the public. But the thing that happened at council that week with Councilman Shields sticking to the assignments, which she has every right to do, having that whole conversation with Councilman Rader saying, I'm not taking these assignments, Councilman Shields saying, okay, well, I have an alternate slate here, and just moving on. That should I hate seeing that done in public, because that should have been done behind closed doors. And I would also argue that it looks petty.
And I think you're not using the full strength of the council. Look, these people were elected by the people of their districts.
Yep.
Use them.
Yep. And again,
they have have earned that spot.
They have. And again,
to do the work of the city.
Right. And yes, and that's a good point. And there will be council members that say, "Hey, elections have consequences. This is
and they do.
And they do.
I mean, it is politics.
Absolutely do. And that's the purview of that mayor pro tem to do that. I think this draws some new, because we are in another year right now. We are right in the middle of charter right now. So the Charter Commission, which Councilman Atkins was on before she became a council member, the Charter Commission can take up all of this if they want to. They could take Mayor Pro Tem out of the mayor's hands, put it back in the council's hands. They could take committee assignments in a different direction if they want. They can do all these things. I'm not suggesting that has to happen, but we can't have another year of this. It's not a good look. And in fact, I would also say that if the mayor, listen, Councilman Shields can bring this list to the mayor can say, I don't like that. We're not going to go that direction. He didn't do that. He could have done that, and he didn't.
As a resident and as someone who follows the stuff, I would like to see all council members participating in the committee processes.
I think that is...
And this looks like that's not the case.
It absolutely does. And so I look at, again, going back to the very beginning of our conversation about the difference in the council districts and the populations, each council district having 26,000 or whatever in each of the 4 districts. You look at District 3 now and their role in committees and liaisons. And it's, as far as leadership goes, it's not there at all. Councilman Atkins didn't get a chair or co-chair assignment, and Councilman Rader does not have a chair or co-chair assignment. Councilman Rader has 1 liaison assignment. Councilman Atkins has a couple, but District 3 is wildly underrepresented right now. And so now I'm a District 1 resident, but I still thinking as the whole of the city that doesn't seem right, and District 3 residents should be upset about that.
All right, I'm going to put you back on the spot.
Okay.
One. If we were to call Councilmember Funk up right now,
okay,
you get one last follow-up question.
One last follow-up question.
What's it going to be?
To Councilman Funk. My follow-up to something I asked.
If you had one more follow-up to this Q&A that we just published on Monday.
Okay.
If you had one more follow-up.
Okay.
Secretly, he's listening right now. I have him on the bat phone.
So one of the interesting things he said at the end of his Downtown Days answer was that I did a follow-up about what will you miss the most, and he said it's just being around people. Like, that was the place where you saw, even if you didn't see your neighbors every day, you bumped into them at Downtown Days. This is where you saw people that you haven't seen in a while, whether it's at the beer tent or walking around shopping or just going inside to get a bite to eat somewhere or whatever it was. My follow-up would be Downtown Lee Summit. It's a very important nonprofit in this community, has lost its biggest fundraiser of the year. It's gone by their own decision, but it's gone now. Would you consider increasing their PSA in the short term to make up for some of that shortfall, or do you have some ideas about another event to help make up some of that revenue? That would have been a nice follow-up, I think.
I think that's a strong follow-up, and those are big questions. I think to ask both of our council members and of downtown Main Street.
Right. There are certain council members that wanted to see Downtown Days gone. There are some that don't like the decision at all. But if there's ever a time, I know downtown got a bump in its PSA recently. If there's ever time to have that discussion about, is there a little more that we can make sure that organization stays strong and does the thing that it's supposed to do following the Missouri Main Street and National Main Street models? Let's have that discussion now. Yep.
I think that's key. And I think if we're all being honest with ourselves, we can all say we're upset. We understand the decision, but we're upset that it's gone because we don't like change, and B, it just was a fantastic community game.
It was, and I went through recently and found all of my Downtown Days shirts for like 16 years.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I may make a memory quilt or something.
Oh, there you go. There's gonna be a quilting party at John's driveway.
Look for my Downtown Days shirts on Facebook Marketplace soon.
Hey, John, thanks for coming in, kind of rehashing some of this, but I thought it was good to do our own little follow up to the Q&A. I hope there's another one coming soon.
I appreciate you having me on, and I know that my column is something that I find very important, and I appreciate your publication still publishing that from time to time.
Yeah, I like the clicks. Thank you. That'll wrap us up for this time. We'll talk to everybody next episode.